Yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreed to a mutual defense partnership, reviving a Cold War alliance as they pledged solidarity in challenging the United States and its allies. This troubling development comes as inspectors with the International Atomic Energy Agency warned that Iran has expanded its primary nuclear facility and could soon have new options for quickly assembling a nuclear arsenal. Is this another result of the Biden administration's weakness on the international stage? And can we expect additional adversaries and rogue agents to challenge the United States and its allies? Joining me now to discuss this is Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for the opportunity, Tony.
So Russia and North Korea have completed a new comprehensive strategic partnership agreement. What do you think this will mean, practically speaking?
Well, practically speaking, I'm not sure exactly what it means, but what it is intended to mean is that our adversaries are becoming allies with one another. It's not a natural relationship, as you might, some people might think, well, gee, a couple of communist countries getting together, that doesn't seem like such a strange deal. But the reality is, up until now, they hadn't had the common enemy that they have in such a big way as they have in the United States, and a common enemy, to your point, that is increasingly projecting weakness on the geopolitical stage. And because of that projection of weakness, I believe they feel emboldened, but they also feel emboldened by the fact that they feel threatened. But you throw in the mullahs in Iran, and you include, of course, Xi Jinping in China, and you're seeing this axis of evil that is a direct result of the projection of weakness by Joe Biden and the Biden administration on the world stage. And it's a significant problem that has a lot of problematic potential to it if it continues this way.
Senator, is this not a remake of what we saw nearly 100 years ago in the 1930s, where we saw the axis of evil developing? I mean, have we not learned from history what happens when we're weak on the international stage?
Evidently not. And Ronald Reagan is probably spinning in his grave right now, because remember, Ronald Reagan stepped forward in a really big way, understanding the common enemy to the United States was communism itself. As he said famously in Fargo, North Dakota once, they would take our God from us. And so now we sort of look at communism, at least as a nation. I certainly don't, you certainly don't, but some people look at communism as almost a desired form of government in some respects. They see capitalism as sort of secondary to socialism, and not really understanding the history that you're talking about. In fact, I would submit to you that the lack of historical perspective is one of the things plaguing our country right now. And as far as regulating, homeschool parents, please, let's have some more homeschool parents that help remind our young people about the cost of weakness on the global stage and the responsibility that we have as the freest people in the world to protect that freedom. All of that said, you're exactly right. It is an axis of evil reconstituting itself, much like what happened 100 years ago. And if we're not careful, we're going to see the same result as we did 100 years ago, except that the United States of America is not going to be as poised to protect itself, much less lead a coalition into a third world war, which we would like to avoid. Again, Ronald Reagan prevented another war by being the strongest nation in the world and projecting that strength and bringing the Soviet Union to its knees without firing a single shot. Along with, by the way, the Pope John Paul, as you recall, and Margaret Thatcher in Great Britain. We just don't have those statesmen anymore in the country or on the global stage.
I mean, what we see, I think, playing out right now is America's taken the role of what Britain was prior to World War II, with simply trying to appease our adversaries and our enemies. And history tells us that evil cannot be appeased. We cannot compromise with that which wants to destroy us. And they have made this very clear. Now, I'm not a hawk. I describe myself as a rational isolationist. Leave me alone and I won't bother you. But if you mess with me, you're in trouble. I mean, I think that should be our posture.
no question about it. But we do carry a responsibility as the United States of America, as the most blessed nation in the world. But remember, so much of what makes us strong, Tony, are our roots of faith. The roots of faith are what provide the virtue which leads to the type of country that we are, and being the strong nation that we are. But we're not sending those signals anymore either. We're not sending the signals of virtue anymore. So it's a combination of things. We need a new generation of leaders to rise up that have the moral convictions and courage to step forward. Yeah, and be a little bit of that isolationist. However, we also want to be evangelists.
Senator Cramer, I want to thank you for bringing that point up, because I've repeated this often, and oftentimes in response to President Trump, who I greatly appreciate, and he wants to make America great again, and so do I. But the path to being great is first being good, and when we lose that moral foundation that you just spoke of, it's hard for us to be taken serious on the international stage. When we have an administration right now that their top foreign policy objective is to push abortion and the LGBTQ agenda, it's hard to be taken seriously as a nation.
No, there's no question, Tony. In fact, just last week, we passed out of the Armed Services Committee the National Defense Authorization Act, and we spend 2 long days sort of holed up together in a classified setting to push this bill out and to debate lots of amendments. But Tony, we spend hours of that time discussing the very things you just brought up, as though fighting wars is secondary to a social experiment whereby they want to pay for, not just allow, but pay for members of the military to have transgender surgeries, to pay for the travel for abortions, as you know. These are just, I'm sure other countries look at us and go, my gosh, these people are going to be easy to beat in a war. They're more consumed with transgender identity politics than they are with, with defending freedom in their own country, much less around the world. So I know it all matters.
Senator, I missed you. I was in your state just a few weeks ago, and I loved loved being there. First time in North Dakota. That was my 50th state. You clearly represent your state. It's a great state, a very conservative state. But how do we get the rest of America, and there are many other states, but North Dakota is actually pretty good when it comes to faith, family, and freedom. How do we get that element back into the foundation of America? Because we can't be strong internationally until we're strong at home, and it comes back to the family, and it comes back to faith, Christian faith.
It really does, Tony. And I think the best way to do it, of course, is by example, right? So we want the rest of the country to be looking at the middle of the country and going, maybe we should be a little more like them. They seem to be a little happier people. They carry a little more joy on their face. They're optimistic people. Maybe we should try that. And I think the first thing is by example. But then, Tony, we do have to take advantage of opportunities like you give me to come onto your show and present that in a bigger format, and to articulate what we're all about. I appreciate you noticing that about our state. I was once the chairman of the Family Policy Council here in North Dakota, a couple of terms, in fact, and I was just honored to be able to do that. In fact, I might consider that more important work than what I'm doing right now, but thank God we have you and your organization with having our backs and holding us accountable. But I would invite you back to North Dakota. Come out to Western North Dakota, see Medora, see the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, see patriotism in the very breath that you breathe out in Western North Dakota. And when you're done, you can head down to Mount Rushmore and do the same in South Dakota.
Well, Senator, I'll be happy to do it anytime in the spring or summer, but I'm not coming up there in the wintertime. Senator Cramer, always great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on the program today.
Thanks, Tony. Always my pleasure.